The year is 1885. In a small, unassuming workshop in Mannheim, Germany, a man named Karl Benz toiled in a world of gears, pistons, and the pungent aroma of petroleum. His brow was perpetually furrowed, etched with the lines of relentless concentration and quiet desperation. Outside, the horse-drawn carriages clattered by their hooves, a rhythmic counterpoint to the insistent metallic symphony. Benz was orchestrating within. He wasn't merely building a machine. He was challenging millennia of human locomotion. "They say it's a madman's folly, Bertha," he would murmur to his steadfast wife. Bertha Benz, her presence a silent anchor in his tumultuous creative storm. "But I see it, clear as day. A carriage without horses, powered by the very essence of fire and air." Bertha, ever practical, yet fiercely supportive, would simply nod, her hands busy mending clothes or preparing a frugal meal. She understood the silent language of his obsession. Benz's early experiments were fraught with peril and frustration. The two-stroke engine he had developed years prior was a marvel, but adapting it to propel a vehicle proved far more complex. He grappled with ignition systems, carburetors, and cooling. Sparks flew, literally and figuratively, as he wrestled with the nascent technology. He spent countless hours bent over his workbench, his calloused fingers meticulously adjusting, tightening, refining. The air in the workshop was thick with the scent of oil, metal dust, and the occasional whiff of experimental fuels. The gas lamp cast dancing shadows, making his solitary figure appear monumental against the backdrop of his nascent invention. His neighbors, if they noticed him at all, likely dismissed him as an eccentric inventor, another dreamer destined for obscurity. They heard the strange backfires, the sputtering coughs, the occasional triumphant roar, followed by a deflating silence. They couldn't fathom the colossal leap of imagination he was attempting. But Benz was undeterred. His mind was a maelstrom of engineering challenges, each problem a mountain to be scaled, each solution a small, internal cheer. One evening, after another day of minor setbacks, he sat slumped, head in hands, amidst the scattered tools and nascent components of his three-wheeled vehicle. "It's the cooling, Bertha," he sighed, his voice raspy with exhaustion. "It overheat. It can't sustain the power." Bertha, without a word, brought him a cup of hot tea. She knew better than to offer platitudes. Instead, she offered sustenance and her unwavering belief. "You'll find a way, Karl," she said softly, her words a gentle balm to his troubled spirit. The breakthrough often came in these quiet moments. Away from the din and the pressure, he realized the need for an evaporative cooler, a simple yet elegant solution. He spent the next weeks meticulously crafting the system, his hands moving with the practiced grace of a surgeon. The patent application, filed on January 29, 1886, for his vehicle powered by a gas engine, was not just a piece of paper. It was a testament to years of struggle, sacrifice, and an unshakable belief in an idea that seemed impossible to everyone but him. When the patent was finally granted, it wasn't met with fanfare, but with a profound, almost spiritual sense of accomplishment. The world had yet to truly understand the silent revolution he had just ignited. Miles away from Benz's Mannheim workshop, in the genteel town of Cannstatt, another silent revolution was brewing. Gottlieb Daimler, a man of refined demeanor and formidable engineering intellect, worked not in a bustling factory, but in a small, brick-walled garden shed. This humble structure, affectionately dubbed his garden house workshop, was where he and his brilliant protege, Wilhelm Maybach, meticulously pursued their own vision of motorized transport. The contrast with Benz's visible, if misunderstood, endeavors couldn't have been starker. Daimler preferred discretion, an almost clandestine approach to his groundbreaking work. Their initial focus was not on a complete vehicle, but on the engine itself, a high-speed, lightweight internal combustion engine that could power anything. Daimler believed that the engine was the heart, and once perfected, it could be adapted to land, sea, and air. He envisioned a universal power source, a silent, efficient beast of burden. His philosophy was rooted in the idea of constant, incremental improvement, a relentless pursuit of efficiency and power. The lighter, the faster, Wilhelm Daimler would often say, his eyes gleaming with the fervor of an inventor. That is the future. We must break free from the limitations of steam and brute force. Maybach, a younger man but equally gifted, was the technical wizard who translated Daimler's grand concepts into tangible reality. He was a master of precision engineering, his hands capable of fabricating intricate components with astonishing accuracy. Together, they formed a formidable duo. Daimler, the visionary entrepreneur and conceptualizer, and Maybach, the meticulous engineer and builder. Their days in the workshop were a quiet ballet of collaboration, whispered discussions, frantic sketches on chalkboards, the rhythmic clang of metal on metal, and the occasional triumphant roar of a newly fired engine. The local townsfolk knew little of the intense activity within the garden shed. They might occasionally hear the unusual sounds, or catch a glimpse of smoke rising from its chimney, but no one suspected the world-altering technology being forged within. This secrecy was partly by design, partly due to the sheer novelty of their work. Who would believe that two men in a garden shed were inventing the future of transportation? The isolation allowed them to experiment freely, to make mistakes and learn from them without public scrutiny or the pressure of external expectations. One particularly cold evening, in late 1885, as a biting wind rattled the workshop windows, Daimler and Maybach struggled with a persistent vibration issue in their latest engine prototype, a vertical, single-cylinder marvel known as the grandfather clock engine. Due to its appearance, "It's the balance," Wilhelm Daimler mused, wiping grease from his brow with the back of his hand. "We need to refine the crankshaft, perhaps adjust the flywheel's mass. Every gram counts, every rotation. We need silk-smooth power, not a juddering tremor." Maybach, already sketching furiously, nodded in agreement. His mind was a whirlwind of calculations and mechanical schematic. "And the carburetor head? We can still improve the fuel-air mixture for better combustion. More power, less fuel. Isn't that the ultimate goal?" Their conversation was a rapid-fire exchange of technical ideas, a language understood only by those intimately familiar with the intricacies of internal combustion. They shared a singular devotion to their craft, a silent pact of innovation that transcended mere employment. Their work was their life, and the garden shed was their temple. The culmination of their efforts was not just an engine, but a principle, the high-speed internal combustion engine. They patented it in 1886. This engine, compact and powerful, would soon find its way into a wooden bicycle, the Reitwagen, arguably the world's first motorcycle, and later into a carriage, transforming it into a self-propelled vehicle. Unlike Benz, who started with the vehicle, Daimler and Maybach started with the engine, believing it to be the fundamental unit of future mobility. Their silent, methodical work in that unassuming garden shed laid the groundwork for an industrial empire, a testament to focused invention away from the public eye. The late 1880s were a simmering crucible of innovation, a quiet but intense race for supremacy in the burgeoning field of internal combustion. While Karl Benz focused on integrating his engine into a complete vehicle, Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach channeled their prodigious talents into perfecting the engine itself, believing that the engine was the true revolution. Their grandfather clock engine, patented in 1886, represented a significant leap forward, not just in its vertical design but in its high-speed capabilities. This was a critical distinction. Earlier engines were cumbersome, slow, and primarily stationary. Daimler and Maybach aimed for lightness, power, and speed. Their workshop in Cannstatt, though humble, became a laboratory of relentless experimentation. The air was often thick with the smell of gasoline and hot metal, punctuated by the rhythmic chugging and roaring of engines undergoing rigorous tests. Maybach, with his almost intuitive understanding of mechanics, was constantly refining components. He experimented with different piston designs, crankshaft materials, and valve timings. Daimler, ever the strategic visionary, provided the direction, and the unshakable belief that their efforts would transform the world. The key Wilhelm Daimler would emphasize, his finger tracing a diagram on a smudged blackboard, is consistency and endurance. Anyone can make an engine run for a few minutes. We need one that runs for hours, reliably, powerfully. This pursuit of reliability was paramount. The public would not embrace a technology that constantly failed. This meant meticulous testing, engines running non-stop, sometimes for days, their vibrations echoing through the quiet garden. They listened to every cough, every splutter, every change in rhythm, interpreting these mechanical whispers as vital diagnostic information. Their work extended beyond mere engine design. Maybach was instrumental in developing the spray nozzle carburetor, a crucial innovation that allowed for a more efficient fuel-air mixture, leading to greater power and fuel economy. Before this, engines relied on surface carburetors, which were less effective and prone to issues. This seemingly minor component was a testament to their deep understanding of the thermodynamic principles at play. It was an unsung hero of early automotive engineering, a silent contributor to the engine's viability. Meanwhile, in Mannheim, Benz was also improving his engine. His focus was on robustness and integration into his three-wheeler. He wrestled with single-cylinder limitations, striving for sufficient power to make his vehicle practical for everyday use, while Daimler and Maybach pursued high speed, prioritized usability and simplicity within his existing vehicle concept. He was also plagued by the skepticism of financial backers and the public, whose imagination struggled to grasp a world without horses. Both teams faced the immense challenge of metallurgy. The materials available at the time were not optimized for the stresses of internal combustion. Parts would overheat, warp, or simply break under prolonged use. The constant cycle of failure, analysis, and redesign was mentally and physically taxing. There were moments of despair, of course, when a promising modification led to an unexpected breakdown, or when a seemingly robust component shattered under stress. Yet, the sheer allure of the possibilities kept them going. The silent hum of a smoothly running engine, however fleeting, was their most potent reward. The race was not overtly competitive between Benz and Daimler. They worked independently, largely unaware of the full extent of each other's achievements. It was a race against the limits of technology, against skepticism, and against the immense technical challenges of creating a machine that could replicate, and eventually surpass, the power of a horse. Their parallel paths, though distinct, were converging on a single, revolutionary outcome: the practical, reliable, internal combustion engine, the very heart of the automotive age. The turn of the 1890s saw two titans of invention, Karl Benz and Gottlieb Daimler, unknowingly shaping the same future from vastly different perspectives and locations. Their lives ran in parallel, like two rivers flowing towards the same ocean, yet separated by an invisible watershed of approach and philosophy. Benz, now with his established Benz & C, was focused on commercializing his motor wagon, steadily refining his three-wheel design and introducing four-wheeled models. Daimler, with his Daimler Motor and Gesellschaft DMG, founded in 1890, with Maybach, pursued a broader vision, licensing his engine technology for various applications while also building complete vehicles. Benz, a self-taught engineer with a profound mechanical intuition, approached vehicle design holistically. His early cars, like the Victoria and Velo, were complete systems. He was deeply involved in every aspect, from chassis to engine to transmission. His temperament was cautious, methodical, and somewhat introverted. He preferred to perfect his inventions before presenting them to the world. One must ensure every bolt, every gear, performs its duty flawlessly. He often emphasized to his engineers, a small team who revered his dedication: a vehicle is a promise of reliability to its owner, a promise we must never break. His factory in Mannheim, though growing, maintained a familial atmosphere. Benz knew most of his workers by name, fostering a sense of shared purpose. He walked the factory floor daily, his keen eyes spotting imperfections, his mind constantly turning over solutions. The smell of hot metal, paint, and gasoline was his daily perfume. He often retreated to his drawing board, sketching out improvements, his pencil a silent extension of his fertile mind. The market was still nascent, and the public slow to adopt, leading to periods of financial strain and quiet anxiety that only Bertha truly understood. Conversely, Daimler, alongside the brilliant Wilhelm Maybach, approached the problem from a different angle. Their focus was on the engine as a standalone product, a power source for universal application. They licensed their engines for boats, tramcars, and even early airships, demonstrating the versatility of their high-speed design. Daimler, more of a businessman and strategist than Benz, understood the commercial potential of broad application. His factory in Cannstatt was more structured, though Maybach remained the technical heart, constantly pushing the boundaries of engine performance. Maybach, often overshadowed by Daimler's entrepreneurial presence, was the quiet genius of DMG. He was relentlessly inventive, developing innovations like the spray nozzle carburetor and the V-twin engine. He spent countless hours in the design office and on the factory floor, his mind perpetually engaged in solving complex engineering puzzles. His dialogue with Daimler was often brief, precise, and highly technical, a shorthand understood only by two minds deeply immersed in the same pursuit. The vibrations are still too pronounced at higher RPMs. Herr Daimler, Maybach would report, gesturing at a schematic. We need to reinforce the engine mounts, perhaps redesign the crankcase for better rigidity. Despite their geographical proximity and shared ambition, the two men never met during these formative years. There are no records of them ever exchanging ideas or even acknowledging each other's existence in a substantive way. Each believed himself to be the sole pioneer, or at least the leading one, in a field that was still largely uncharted. This silent separation, fueled by a nascent competitive spirit and the immense challenges of a new industry, shaped their respective companies' identities. Benz and C became known for its complete vehicles and practical robustness, while DMG became synonymous with powerful, high-performance engines. Their paths, though separate, were both expressions of a profound dream to free humanity from the limitations of animal power and to usher in an era of unprecedented mobility. The 1890s, therefore, were not just a decade of parallel invention but of silent, groundbreaking foundational work, laying the crucial groundwork for what would eventually become a unified automotive legend. The dawn of the new century brought with it a pivotal figure who would forever intertwine the destiny of Daimler Motor and Gesellschaft with a name that would resonate globally: Mercedes. Emil Jelinek was no ordinary customer. He was an Austro-Hungarian businessman, an enthusiastic automobile racing promoter, and a shrewd entrepreneur. Based in Nice on the French Riviera, Jelinek understood the nascent automobile market better than many manufacturers themselves. He possessed an uncanny ability to foresee trends and an unshakable belief in the potential of Daimler's engines. Especially for racing, Jelinek had been a significant customer for DMG for several years, ordering large quantities of their Daimler vehicles, which he then sold to the wealthy elite of Europe. He had even raced under the pseudonym Mercedes, the Spanish given name of his beloved eldest daughter. His demands were precise, uncompromising, and often pushed Maybach and Daimler's engineers to their limits. "Your engines are powerful, Herr Maybach," Jelinek would write in letters, his tone a mix of flattery and insistent criticism. "But they are still too high, too heavy, too unstable for true racing performance. My customers demand speed, elegance, and victory. The future is low, long, and light." By 1900, Jelinek's influence had grown to such an extent that he effectively commissioned a completely new design from DMG. He placed an order for 36 vehicles, an enormous commitment at the time, on the strict condition that Wilhelm Maybach design a revolutionary new engine and chassis, and that this new model be named Mercedes. Maybach, initially hesitant about relinquishing his beloved engine's identity, was eventually convinced by Daimler's commercial acumen and Jelinek's sheer buying power. The stakes were high. DMG needed this significant order. This was the genesis of the Mercedes 35 HP, a car that would redefine the automobile and establish a new benchmark for engineering excellence. Maybach, under immense pressure, and with Jelinek's demanding specifications ringing in his ears, poured his genius into the project. He understood that this wasn't just another car, it was a statement. He had to create a vehicle that was not only fast but also safe, stable, and aesthetically pleasing to the discerning clientele Jelinek served. The challenges were immense, from designing a lightweight, pressed steel frame to integrating the powerful 5.9-liter four-cylinder engine with an innovative low center of gravity. The radiator must be integral, not an afterthought, Maybach insisted to his team, sketching furiously on a large sheet of paper. "We need the honeycomb design for maximum cooling efficiency, to allow for sustained high speeds without overheating, and the long wheelbase, the wide track. These are essential for stability at speed. We must build a racing car for the road, a true sports car, before the term even existed." The development process was a whirlwind of calculations, metal fabrication, and test drives. Maybach and his engineers worked late into the nights, fueled by coffee and an unshakable belief in their capabilities. Every component was scrutinized, every measurement precise. Jelinek's demands for speed and elegance, coupled with Maybach's uncompromising engineering standards, created a perfect storm of innovation. When the Mercedes 35 HP finally emerged in December 1900, it was a revelation. Its long, low silhouette, powerful engine, and advanced features such as a gate-shift transmission immediately set it apart. It won race after race on the Riviera, dominating the competition and proving Jelinek's vision prophetic. The car was not just a commercial success, it was an icon. It wasn't just fast, it was beautiful, and most importantly, it bore the elegant, sonorous name, Mercedes. This car, born from the collaboration between a visionary entrepreneur and a quiet engineering genius, marked the symbolic death of the old horseless carriage and the birth of the modern automobile. It was a silent, powerful statement that echoed across the nascent automotive world, signaling a new era of performance and luxury, all thanks to a young girl's name. The early 1900s brought both triumph and profound loss to Daimler. While the Mercedes 35 HP was revolutionizing the automotive world, the company's visionary Gottlieb Daimler passed away in March 1900, just as the first Mercedes was nearing completion. His death left a significant void, not just in leadership, but in the very soul of the company. The storm of grief and uncertainty hung heavy over the Cannstatt workshops, yet the spirit of innovation he had fostered, largely through Wilhelm Maybach, continued to burn brightly. Often called the king of designers, found himself in an even more critical role. With Daimler gone, the mantle of technical leadership fell squarely upon his shoulders. He was a man of few words, his conversations typically revolving around blueprints, engine specifications, and the relentless pursuit of mechanical perfection. His psychological landscape was one of deep immersion in his craft, a quiet dedication that bordered on monotony. He wasn't a charismatic leader in the conventional sense, but his sheer technical brilliance commanded immense respect from his engineers and workers. Despite the somber atmosphere, the demands of the market, particularly those driven by Emil Jelinek, were relentless. The success of the 35 HP meant that expectations for subsequent models were incredibly high. Maybach understood that resting on their laurels was not an option. The nascent automotive industry was fiercely competitive, with new manufacturers emerging almost daily. To stay ahead, DMG had to innovate continuously, to push the boundaries of what was technologically possible. Maybach's genius was evident in the rapid succession of groundbreaking designs that followed the 35 HP he developed. The first Mercedes cars with 4 cylinders in blocks, advancing engine design and manufacturing efficiency. He introduced the Mercedes Simplex models, which further refined the low-slung, powerful car concept. His work on cooling systems, ignition technologies, and chassis dynamics continued to set industry standards. Each improvement, each new patent, was a silent testament to his tireless dedication and unparalleled skill. One persistent challenge was the growing demand for more power and speed, often at the expense of reliability if not carefully managed. Maybach faced pressure from sales teams and customers like Jelinek to always go faster. He often found himself in heated, though polite, debates with the commercial side of the company, advocating for engineering integrity over raw, unproven speed. Speed is nothing without control. Herr Jelinek, he might have argued, his voice steady, and control is nothing without durability. We build machines that last, that perform, that instill confidence, not merely fleeting thrills. His days were a blur of drawing boards, test tracks, and the factory floor. He was known to personally supervise the assembly of new engines, ensuring that every component met his exacting standards. He listened to the engine's symphony, detecting the slightest irregularity, diagnosing problems with an almost supernatural precision. He was the embodiment of the company's engineering soul, a living bridge between Daimler's initial vision and its evolving reality. However, the pressures of running a large company, coupled with his pure engineering focus, eventually led to friction. Maybach was an inventor, not a corporate manager. The growing bureaucracy and the shift from pure innovation to mass production began to grate on him. By 1907, feeling increasingly constrained and creatively stifled, Wilhelm Maybach, the quiet genius behind the Mercedes name, would leave DMG to pursue his own independent ventures. But the foundation he had laid, the engineering principles he had instilled, and the Mercedes brand he had helped forge would continue to propel Daimler Motorengesellschaft forward. A powerful legacy born from his silent, unyielding dedication amidst the storm of change and loss. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 shattered the burgeoning automotive industry, transforming factories that once produced luxury cars into arsenals for the war effort. Daimler Motorengesellschaft (DMG) and Benz & C, like all German manufacturers, faced immense pressure to contribute to the nation's military. The transition was swift and brutal. The silent hum of engine testing and the precise clang of CHASSIS assembly were replaced by the cacophony of armaments production, Workers who had once crafted elegant automobile bodies now fabricated aircraft engines, truck chassis, and even submarine components. The atmosphere on the factory floor shifted from one of meticulous craft to relentless, hyper-shear output. The psychological impact on the workforce was profound. Men who had dreamed of personal mobility were now building machines of war, often under grueling conditions. Women entered the factories in unprecedented numbers, taking on roles traditionally held by men. Their hands, once accustomed to domestic tasks, now operating heavy machinery. At DMG, the company's technical prowess, honed by years of automotive innovation, was redirected. Their powerful engines, once destined for grand touring cars, were now adapted for military aircraft, earning a formidable reputation for reliability and performance in the air. The Mercedes aero engines became vital to the German Air Force, a silent testament to the engineering foundation laid by Daimler and Maybach. The focus was no longer on luxury or speed for sport, but on endurance and combat effectiveness. Benz & C also underwent a similar transformation, producing trucks, military vehicles, and parts for heavy machinery. Karl Benz, though less directly involved in daily operations by this point, watched with a heavy heart as his vision of peaceful transport was subsumed by the machinery of war. The raw materials scarcity became a constant battle. Steel, rubber, and fuel were diverted to the war front, forcing engineers to find ingenious solutions, often using inferior or substitute materials, just to keep production going. When the war finally ended in 1918, Germany lay in ruins, its economy shattered, its people exhausted. The aftermath plunged both DMG and Benz & C into an unprecedented economic crisis. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh restrictions, and hyperinflation ravaged the currency. The demand for luxury cars, once their bread and butter, evaporated overnight. Factories struggled to convert back to civilian production, facing severe shortages of capital, raw materials, and a viable domestic market. Management at both companies grappled with existential questions. How could they survive in a country where the currency was worth less by the hour, where coal was more valuable than cash, and where millions were unemployed? The silent struggle for survival played out in boardrooms and on factory floors. Wage negotiations were fraught, often conducted with wheelbarrows full of worthless banknotes. The skilled workforce, once the pride of German industry, faced the prospect of unemployment. Many employees left to seek work abroad or turned to subsistence farming. Yet, even in this maelstrom, the spirit of engineering resilience persisted. Engineers and designers, their creativity now constrained by economic realities, found ways to adapt. They designed simpler, more economical vehicles, trucks essential for rebuilding the shattered infrastructure, and even began to consider export markets, though these too were difficult to penetrate. The period from 1918 to the mid-1920s was a dark, silent chapter of survival, a test of fortitude for two companies that had once defined the cutting edge of innovation. They learned to be lean, resourceful, and to value every last resource, lessons that would prove invaluable in the decades to come. The silent machinery of industry, once a symbol of progress, now whirred quietly, desperately striving for a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. The brutal economic realities of post-World War I Germany, particularly the hyperinflation of the early 1920s, forced unimaginable decisions upon even the most established industrial giants. Daimler Motorengesellschaft, DMG, and Benz & C, fierce rivals for decades, found themselves teetering on the precipice of ruin. Their individual struggles, once a source of competitive drive, now threatened to consume them both. The silent understanding that neither could survive alone began to take root in their respective boardrooms. Discussions of cooperation, initially informal and hesitant, began as early as 1919. The idea of two companies, founded by men who had never even met, but whose inventions were intrinsically linked, joining forces seemed almost sacrilegious to some. Yet, the logic was undeniable. Eliminate redundant production, combine resources, streamline research and development, and present a unified front against a devastated market and burgeoning international competition. The discussions were delicate, filled with corporate pride, historical legacies, and the immense egos of their respective leadership. Karl Benz, by this time an elder statesman of the automobile world, observed the merger talks with a mixture of pride and pragmatic resignation. His company, Benz and C, was deeply entwined with his life's work. To see it merge with that of his old, silent rival Daimler was a complex emotional experience. He understood the necessity, the silent imperative of survival, but the merging of identities was a difficult pill to swallow. His influence, though advisory, was still felt, ensuring that his legacy would be respected within the new entity. The negotiations were arduous, stretching over several years. There were disagreements over valuation, leadership structures, and, most symbolically, the branding. What would the new company be called? What would its emblem be? These seemingly minor details were proxies for deeper questions of identity and legacy. Each company had its own loyalties, its own technical philosophies. Benz and C was known for robust, practical cars, DMG for elegant, high-performance vehicles. Reconciling these different approaches required immense diplomatic skill and a shared commitment to a future greater than their individual pasts. Finally, in 1926, the impossible happened. Daimler Motorgesellschaft and Benz and C merged to form Daimler-Benz AG, the name chosen for their automobiles. Mercedes-Benz was a stroke of genius, combining the powerful brand established by Jelinek and Maybach with the pioneering name of Karl Benz. It was a fusion of elegance and invention, of speed and practicality, of two separate legacies united into a single, formidable entity. The three-pointed star of Daimler, symbolizing motorization on land, on water, and in the air, was married with the laurel wreath of Benz, a symbol of his early patent and racing victories. The merger was not just a legal formality, it was an act of profound industrial consolidation, born of necessity. The immediate benefits were clear: reduced overhead, combined sales networks, and a larger pool of engineering talent. Designers and engineers from both sides, once rivals, now had to collaborate, learning from each other's strengths. The initial friction was inevitable, a silent tension as different corporate cultures adapted, but the common goal of rebuilding and excelling eventually prevailed. The creation of Mercedes-Benz was more than a business deal. It was a testament to the enduring power of innovation and the resilience of human enterprise in the face of overwhelming adversity. From the ashes of war and economic collapse, a new automotive giant was born. Its name a harmonious blend of its disparate origins, ready to silently conquer the world with its combined heritage of luxury, performance, and engineering excellence. It was a silent, strategic masterstroke that would define the automotive landscape for generations. The 1930s roared to life with the unforgettable legend of the Silver Arrows, a period that cemented Mercedes-Benz's reputation for unparalleled engineering and racing dominance. After the merger, the newly formed Daimler-Benz AG recognized the immense value of motorsport for proving technical superiority and boosting brand image. They poured resources into developing state-of-the-art racing machines, and the result was a series of cars that would become legendary for their speed, innovation, and striking appearance. The story of the Silver Arrows began in 1934. At the Mercedes-Benz had prepared their new W25 racing car, a powerful machine boasting a 3.4-liter, straight-eight engine capable of producing 354 horsepower. However, at the pre-race weigh-in, the W25 exceeded the maximum permissible weight of 750 kilograms by a single kilogram. Faced with disqualification, racing manager Alfred Newp, a charismatic and resourceful leader, made a daring decision. He ordered the car's white paint to be stripped off overnight, revealing the gleaming aluminum bodywork underneath. This drastic measure brought the car within the weight limit, and the Silver Arrows were born, captivating the public and inadvertently creating an iconic identity. From that moment, the silver cars, driven by a pantheon of legendary drivers like Rudolf Carracci, Manfred von Brochich, and Luigi F, dominated the Grand Prix circuits. The roaring engines, the blur of silver on the track, the spray of gravel, these were the spectacles that defined an era. Caracciolo, known as the Regenmeister Rainmaster for his exceptional skill in wet conditions, epitomized the calm, precise control required to tame these formidable machines. His psychological approach to racing was one of absolute focus, a silent communion with his powerful machine, pushing limits without succumbing to recklessness. Behind the scenes, the engineering team led by Max Saylor worked tirelessly. Each race was a brutal testbed for innovation. Every setback, every failure, was meticulously analyzed. The mechanics and engineers at the trackside were a silent army, their hands swift and practiced, their minds constantly problem-solving. They worked under immense pressure, often through the night, to get the cars ready for the next practice session or race. The smell of high-octane fuel, burnt oil, and hot rubber was their constant companion. They pushed the boundaries of engine design, aerodynamics, and chassis construction. Superchargers became standard, boosting power output to astonishing levels. The W125, introduced in 1937, boasted over 600 horsepower from its 5.7-liter engine, making it one of the most powerful Grand Prix cars ever built, a record that stood for decades. Its advanced suspension system and aerodynamic bodywork were revolutionary. The engineers were not just building cars, they were conducting an ongoing experiment in the physics of speed and control. Their dominance was not without its dangers. Racing in the 1930s was incredibly perilous, and the line between triumph and tragedy was thin. Drivers faced tremendous G-forces, blistering speeds on often rudimentary tracks, and the constant threat of mechanical failure. The roaring crowds, the fervent patriotism of the era, and the sheer audacity of these machines created an intoxicating atmosphere. Yet, for the engineers and mechanics, it was a silent, intense battle against the elements, against rival manufacturers like Auto Union, and against the limitations of current technology. The Silver Arrows were more than just racing cars. They were symbols of German engineering prowess, technological advancement, and national pride. They were a testament to the combined legacies of Benz and Daimler, proving that their unified company could not only survive, but excel on the world stage. Their silent thunder on the racetracks echoed across the globe, broadcasting a message of speed, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to engineering perfection that would define Mercedes-Benz for decades to come, even as the world edged closer to another devastating conflict. As the roaring engines of the Silver Arrows faded, replaced by the grim echoes of approaching conflict, Mercedes-Benz once again found itself engulfed by the machinery of war. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 plunged Germany, and by extension its industries, into a total war economy. The factories that had produced the world's finest luxury cars and dominant racing machines were now repurposed for military production on an unprecedented scale. This was a silent, stark transformation, far more extensive and devastating than the previous war. The primary focus shifted to aircraft engines, particularly the renowned Daimler-Benz DB600 series, which powered iconic Luftwaffe aircraft like the Messerschmitt Bf 109 and Heinkel He 111. The demand for these powerful, reliable engines was immense, pushing production capacities to their absolute limits. The factories, once filled with skilled craftsmen, now saw a rapid expansion of the workforce, including forced laborers and prisoners of war, a dark stain on the company's history. The ethical compromises made during this period cast a long, uncomfortable shadow over its post-war legacy. The human cost of this production was immeasurable, a silent tragedy unfolding within the roar of engines. Trucks, tanks, and other military vehicles also became central to Mercedes-Benz's output. The legendary Unimog, though developed slightly later, had its conceptual roots in the need for versatile, robust utility vehicles during and immediately after the war. Production lines, once geared for bespoke automotive craftsmanship, were optimized for mass production of military hardware. Quality control, while still present, was often sacrificed at the altar of sheer volume and speed of delivery. The silent, meticulous processes of luxury car manufacturing were replaced by the hurried, utilitarian rhythms of wartime industry. Bombing raids by Allied forces became a constant, terrifying threat. Mercedes-Benz plants in Stuttgart and Turkheim, Sindelfingen, Gagino, and other locations were strategic targets due to their critical role in aircraft engine production. Workers lived and toiled under the constant specter of air raids, often retreating to bunkers or makeshift shelters. The sound of air raid sirens became a grim soundtrack to their daily lives, a stark reminder of the war raging above and around them. Production was frequently interrupted, buildings damaged, and precious machinery destroyed. Management faced immense pressure from the Nazi regime to maintain and increase output, often at any cost. The psychological toll on individuals was immense. Engineers and designers, who had once dreamt of elegant automobiles, now focused their intellect on maximizing horsepower for fighter planes or designing more resilient truck chassis for the Eastern Front. Their silent moral struggles, Their personal anxieties amidst the nationalistic fervor remained largely unrecorded but were undoubtedly profound. The end of the war in 1945 left Mercedes-Benz factories in ruins. The once proud industrial complexes were reduced to rubble, their machinery twisted and broken. The workforce was scattered, many having perished, others displaced. The infrastructure was shattered, raw materials non-existent, and the future of the company, like that of Germany itself, seemed utterly bleak. The silence that fell over the bombed-out factories after the last raid was a silence of devastation, of an industry brought to its knees, facing the monumental task of rebuilding from absolute zero. This period was a profound test of resilience, a dark chapter that would forever influence the company's trajectory, teaching it lessons of survival and adaptability that would be crucial for its rebirth. The end of World War II left Daimler-Benz AG, like much of Germany, in ruins. Factories lay in rubble, machinery was destroyed or confiscated, and the workforce was fragmented. The silence of devastation hung heavy over their once thriving plants. Yet, from these ashes, an indomitable spirit of recovery began to stir. The task of rebuilding seemed insurmountable, but the determination to resurrect the proud Mercedes-Benz name was fierce. The immediate post-war years were a testament to sheer human resilience and ingenuity. With virtually no resources, workers scavenged for parts, cleared rubble by hand, and improvised repairs. The first vehicles produced were not luxury cars, but desperately needed trucks, like the L3500, and small vans, essential for rebuilding the shattered infrastructure of Germany. These utilitarian vehicles, built with whatever materials could be salvaged, were the silent workhorses of a nation slowly getting back on its feet. Production was initially slow, painstaking, and often relied on bartering for essential components. Management, led by individuals like Wilhelm Haspel and later Fritz Knecht, faced immense challenges, securing raw materials, rebuilding supply chains, and re-establishing international markets in a world suspicious of German industry. The company operated under strict Allied control for a period, further complicating their efforts. The financial struggles were constant, and every decision was a critical step in the precarious journey back to solvency. By the early 1950s, a sense of cautious optimism began to emerge. The German Wirtschaftswunder economic miracle provided a much-needed tailwind. Mercedes-Benz gradually returned to passenger car production, starting with more modest models, like the 170V pre-war design, but quickly moving towards more sophisticated offerings. The engineers, many of whom had endured the war, channeled their renewed energy into innovative designs, leveraging their unparalleled expertise. The true symbol of this rebirth, and a car that would become an instant icon, was the 300 SL Gullwing, launched in 1954, born from a successful racing program. The 300 SL was a marvel of engineering and design. Its distinctive gullwing doors, tubular spaceframe, and the world's first series production fuel injection system made it a technological tour de force. It wasn't just fast, it was breathtakingly beautiful and instantly recognizable. The decision to produce such an extravagant and technically advanced car, initially driven by US importer Max Hoffmann's belief in its market potential, was a bold statement that Mercedes-Benz was back, and more innovative than ever. Developing the 300 SL was a clandestine project, shrouded in secrecy to surprise the world. Engineers worked tirelessly, often late into the night, pushing the boundaries of material science and aerodynamics. The silent precision of their calculations and the careful craftsmanship of their hands created a masterpiece. When it was unveiled, it captured the imagination of the world, proving that German engineering could not only recover, but could again lead. Its success was a psychological boost for the entire company, and indeed for post-war Germany. Alongside the models like the luxurious Adenauer 300, favored by Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, and the elegant Ponton series, brought sophistication and reliability back to the Mercedes-Benz brand. These cars were not just modes of transport, they were symbols of renewed prosperity, quality, and a commitment to excellence. The silent suffering of the war years had given way to a powerful resurgence, fueled by an unwavering dedication to engineering and design, marking a glorious chapter in the company's enduring narrative. As the world sped into the second half of the 20th century, having successfully rebuilt its reputation for luxury and performance, turned its attention to a crucial, yet often silent, aspect of automotive design: safety. While speed and power captivated the public, the engineers at Stuttgart recognized a profound moral and ethical responsibility to protect occupants. This commitment to safety would become a cornerstone of the brand's identity, often leading the industry and saving countless lives. The pioneering figure in this revolution was Bela Berényi, a brilliant and somewhat eccentric engineer who joined Daimler-Benz in Senjo. Berényi's ideas were radical, often dismissed by his contemporaries as outlandish, but he possessed an unshakable belief in his vision. He conceptualized the passenger safety cell in 1951, a rigid, non-deformable occupant compartment, combined with crumple zones at the front and rear. This fundamental innovation, patented by Mercedes-Benz, was a paradigm shift from the conventional wisdom that a rigid car was always safer. Berényi understood that controlled deformation could absorb kinetic energy, protecting the occupants within the cell. The first production car to feature this revolutionary safety cell was the Mercedes-Benz W111 Fintail series. Introduced in 1959, this was not a flashy marketing gimmick. It was a deeply ingrained engineering philosophy. The car's robust passenger compartment, designed to withstand significant impact, coupled with strategically deforming front and rear sections, marked the beginning of modern passive safety. The Fintail also pioneered features like a padded dashboard, recessed controls, and a collapsible steering column, all silent guardians, designed to mitigate injury in a collision. But passive safety was only one part of the equation. Mercedes-Benz engineers also focused on active safety, features designed to prevent accidents from happening in the first place. The 1960s and 70s saw the relentless pursuit of better braking systems, improved suspension for enhanced road holding, and superior lighting. In 1961, they introduced disc brakes on all four wheels as standard on some models, significantly improving stopping power and fade resistance. The brand's commitment to chassis dynamics and driver control was an ongoing, silent effort to build cars that were inherently safer to drive. Crash testing became an integral, and often brutal, part of the development process. From 1959, Mercedes-Benz conducted systematic crash tests, deliberately destroying cars to gather data. This was a costly, painstaking, and often heartbreaking process for engineers who had poured their hearts into designing these vehicles. Yet, the data gathered, the slow-motion films of dummies impacting dashboards, and the meticulous analysis of crumple patterns provided invaluable insights, leading to continuous improvements in seatbelts, airbags pioneered by Mercedes-Benz in production cars in the early 1980s, and reinforced body structures. Berényi himself was a man of quiet conviction. He often worked in solitude, his mind grappling with complex physics and human anatomy, envisioning scenarios of impact long before they could be replicated. His psychological profile was one of a relentless problem solver, driven by a profound sense of responsibility for human life. He believed that good engineering transcended aesthetics and performance. It was about safeguarding the most precious cargo, human beings. This unwavering commitment to safety first permeated every level of the company. It wasn't just a department, it was a mindset. Every new model, every redesign, carried the silent legacy of Berényi and the dedication of countless engineers who pushed for stronger materials, smarter designs, and more protective features. The introduction of ABS anti-lock braking system in 1978, developed in collaboration with Bosch, was another monumental step in active safety, preventing wheel lock-up during hard braking and allowing drivers to maintain steering control. These innovations, often unseen or unappreciated until a moment of crisis, were the silent heroes that set Mercedes-Benz apart, establishing a benchmark for safety that the rest of the automotive world would strive to follow. The latter half of the 20th century saw Mercedes-Benz consolidate its position as a global leader in luxury and engineering. With the foundation of safety firmly established, the company embarked on a period of unprecedented global expansion, driven by an unwavering commitment to engineering excellence and a strategy of diversification. This era was characterized by a silent but powerful drive to reach new markets, innovate across a broader product portfolio, and solidify its reputation worldwide. During the 1980s and 1990s, Mercedes-Benz expanded its model range significantly beyond traditional sedans. The introduction of the compact 190e Baby Benz in 1982 was a pivotal moment. This car, a smaller, more affordable Mercedes, opened up the brand to a new generation of buyers, proving that the company could maintain its core values of quality and engineering in a more accessible package. It was a strategic move to fend off competition from Japanese and other European manufacturers entering the luxury segment. The 190e also served as a testbed for new technologies, including multi-link rear suspension, which revolutionized ride comfort and handling for its class. Engineering continued to be the bedrock of the company's philosophy. Mercedes-Benz was often the first to introduce groundbreaking technologies into mass production. The 1990s, in particular, saw a surge of innovation. Electronic Stability Program (ESP) in 1995, an active safety system that became a global standard. Brake Assist System Bus and advanced airbag systems. These were not just features, they were complex systems requiring immense research and development, often working silently in the background, only intervening when absolutely necessary to prevent an accident. The global reach expanded exponentially. New manufacturing plants were established in the United States, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in 1997, South Africa, and Asia, signaling a strategic shift from being solely a German exporter to a truly international producer. This meant adapting production processes to different logistical challenges, cultural nuances, and market demands. The task of maintaining consistent quality across diverse manufacturing sites was immense, requiring meticulous oversight and stringent quality control protocols, a silent, ongoing battle for perfection. Leadership during this period emphasized a balance between tradition and progress. Figures like Edzard Reuter and Jürgen Schrimp navigated the company through complex economic cycles and increasing globalization. Their psychological profiles reflected a blend of strategic foresight and a deep respect for the company's heritage. They understood that while growth was essential, compromising on the Mercedes-Benz promise of quality was not an option. The brand also ventured into new segments, developing SUVs M-Class in 1997, Roadsters SLK in 1996, and expanding its commercial vehicle division with a range of vans and trucks. This diversification strategy, while successful, also presented its challenges, requiring different engineering approaches and market understanding for each segment. The silent story of this expansion involved countless hours of market research, logistical planning, and the hard work of thousands of employees around the globe, all striving to uphold the brand's reputation. Through these decades, the Mercedes-Benz star became a ubiquitous symbol of aspiration and achievement, not just in Europe or North America, but across emerging economies. It wasn't just about selling cars. It was about selling a promise of quality, safety, and sophisticated engineering. The global growth was a testament to the enduring power of its initial founders' visions, now amplified and adapted for a truly interconnected world, silently laying the groundwork for the challenges of the 21st century. As the millennium turned, Mercedes-Benz found itself at the cusp of yet another transformative era, the digital age and the dawn of electrification. The silent whir of electric motors began to replace the throaty roar of internal combustion in the distant future, and connectivity became as crucial as horsepower. This period demanded a radical shift in thinking, moving beyond traditional mechanical engineering to embrace software, electronics, and sustainable propulsion. Early 2000s saw a massive integration of digital technology into vehicles, from sophisticated infotainment systems like Command to advanced drive assistance systems ADAS, such as Distronic Adaptive Cruise Control and PRE-safe pre-collision protection. Cars became increasingly complex computers on wheels. This shift brought a new kind of engineering challenge, managing vast lines of code, ensuring cybersecurity, and seamlessly integrating disparate electronic components. The silent story here was the exponential growth of software engineers and data scientists within the company, working alongside traditional mechanical experts. The focus on safety evolved from passive and active to preventive safety, where the car actively anticipated and reacted to potential dangers. Sensors, cameras, and radar systems became commonplace, forming a sophisticated network that continuously monitored the vehicle's. The psychological impact on drivers was subtle but profound. They drove with a new layer of protection, often unaware of the silent calculations and interventions happening milliseconds before they even perceived a threat. However, the biggest challenge looming was climate change and the imperative for sustainable mobility. While early forays into hybrid technology were tentative, The 2010s saw a decisive pivot towards electrification. Mercedes-Benz announced its EQ Electric Intelligence sub-brand, signaling a commitment to a full range of electric vehicles. This wasn't merely about swapping an engine for a battery. It required a complete rethinking of vehicle architecture, material science, and manufacturing processes. Engineers grappled with battery technology, range anxiety, charging infrastructure, and the immense weight of large battery packs. The silent discussions in design studios revolved around aerodynamics for efficiency, lightweight materials, and regenerative braking. We cannot simply electrify an existing chassis, one engineer might have argued. We need a dedicated electric platform, designed from the ground up, to truly unlock the potential of EV technology and maintain the Mercedes-Benz driving experience. This era also brought new competitors, not just from traditional rivals but from technology giants and innovative EV startups. Mercedes-Benz had to adapt its corporate culture, becoming more agile and digitally fluent. The psychological transformation within the company was immense, moving from a century of perfecting the internal combustion engine to embracing a completely different paradigm. It was a silent internal struggle to balance heritage with the demands of the future. A future where the distinctive sound of a roaring V8 might be replaced by the almost imperceptible hum of an electric motor. Investing billions in research and development, forging partnerships with tech companies, and retraining its workforce, Mercedes-Benz began to lay the groundwork for a new chapter. The digital age and the electrification's dawn were not just technological shifts. They represented a fundamental redefinition of what an automobile could be, and Mercedes-Benz was determined to lead this silent, profound revolution, ensuring its star continued to shine brightly in a rapidly changing world. As Mercedes-Benz enters the 2020s and beyond, the narrative shifts from historical triumphs to the audacious challenges of shaping the future of mobility. This is a future increasingly defined by silent technologies, autonomous driving, sustainable materials, and a commitment to carbon neutrality. The company is now navigating a landscape of rapid technological acceleration, societal demands for environmental responsibility, and an evolving perception of luxury. Autonomous driving, perhaps the most profound shift since the invention of the automobile itself, is at the forefront of this evolution. Mercedes-Benz is not merely integrating drive assistance features, it is working towards Level 3 and eventually Level 4 and 5 autonomous capabilities. This involves an incredibly complex interplay of artificial intelligence, LiDAR, radar, cameras, and advanced mapping technologies. The silent decision-making process of an AI-driven car, processing terabytes of data per second to navigate traffic, is a marvel of modern engineering. The silent story is the intense ethical debate, the regulatory hurdles, and the immense testing required to make these systems fail-safe. Sustainability has become a non-negotiable imperative. Mercedes-Benz aims for a fully electric product portfolio and carbon-neutral production by 2039. This involves not only manufacturing electric vehicles, but also rethinking the entire supply chain. From sourcing raw materials ethically to recycling batteries responsibly, engineers are exploring innovative materials, vegan leather, recycled plastics, bamboo fibers that reduce the environmental footprint without compromising on the luxury experience. This quest for sustainability is a silent revolution happening at every stage of design and production, driven by a profound understanding of ecological responsibility. Connectivity is another key pillar. Cars are no longer isolated machines, but integrated nodes within a larger digital ecosystem. Over-the-air updates, seamless integration with smart homes and personal devices, and predictive maintenance are becoming standard. The vehicle communicates silently with its environment, with other vehicles, and with the cloud, creating a safer, more efficient, and more personalized driving experience. The psychological comfort of knowing your car is constantly updated and connected, even when silent, adds a new dimension to luxury. Customer experience is being redefined. In an era where physical ownership might evolve into subscription models or shared mobility services, Mercedes-Benz is focusing on creating emotionally resonant, technologically advanced experiences. The interior of future Mercedes-Benz vehicles will be less about driving controls and more about luxurious, personalized spaces for work, relaxation, or entertainment. The silent interactions with advanced voice assistants and intuitive interfaces will become the new hallmark of sophistication. luxury. The leadership faces the delicate balance of preserving the brand's century-old heritage of craftsmanship and performance, while embracing radical new technologies. It's a silent dialogue between tradition and transformation, ensuring that the star remains a symbol of pioneering excellence. The future for Mercedes-Benz is not just electric. It is intelligent, sustainable, and deeply human-centric. The next chapter will be written not with the roar of a powerful engine, but with the silent hum of innovation, moving humanity forward with dignity, responsibility, and an unwavering commitment to the ultimate driving and living experience, continuing the silent story of its relentless pursuit of perfection.